You're walking home from your school, uni, work, the local Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and you see something glittering in front of you. You stoop to pick it up and it's a ring. And you think, hey, that's a pretty good find. I'll try it on. And you slip it over your finger, suddenly you're invisible. You have superpowers. But what will you do with these superpowers? Will you be a hero? A villain? Will you do anything at all? And what do superpowers tell us about the nature of justice? These are the questions posed by the Ring of Gyges, one of philosophy's first thought experiments, and the subject of this week's video. The Ring of Gyges features in Book 2 of Plato's Republic. It's a really fun thought experiment. It's often overshadowed by The Cave, but given the proliferation of superhero media in our culture over the past decade, I think it's pretty fun. Now, think about Spider-Man's origin story, right? We all know this. Peter Parker's Uncle Ben is like, Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. He's just like, no way, man. I'm going to become a wrestler and make bank. And then Uncle Ben is ironically shot. He's just like, no, I'm going to become a Spider-Man and avenge you. But what Peter really should have said is, why? Why does great power mean greater responsibility? Is this a deontological argument, Uncle Ben? Is it about consequences? Should we get a whiteboard so we can break it down? Okay, you're dead. And this is what the Ring of Gyges does. It asks us what the consequences of becoming more than human would mean for something like justice. And this is the big question of the Republic. What is justice? Both as an individual virtue and a characteristic of a political community. Because for Plato, they must be the same thing. Socrates and his mates are discussing it. And in Book 2, he says, well, what sort of thing is justice? And he says, well, justice is something that is both good in itself and produces good consequences. And his friend Glaucon is like, that's bullshit, Socrates, and I'm gonna tell you why. He begins with a pretty funny starting point. He says, okay, everyone, we know that doing wrong is good. What does he mean by this? He means that if you can lie, cheat, steal, and murder your way to the top of society without any consequences, it's a good thing, for you at least. He also says that being wronged is bad. Right? You don't want to be murdered. You don't want to be cheated. You don't want to be subjected to a despotic authority. And the thing with people is that we're vulnerable. We're all vulnerable to the consequences of wrongdoing. And this is where justice starts to creep in. We all say, okay, look, we're all vulnerable, so we're all going to have to follow some certain particular rules because none of us can get away with breaking them. And in the end, it'll be better for everyone. Glaucon brings up Gyges of Lydia, who was a king of Asia Minor. His ancestor allegedly had a pretty weird experience. He was a simple shepherd, tending his flocks, when one day there was an earthquake. And a great cave opens up before him, and he goes in and it is full of wonders. But the most wonderful thing of all is a great bronze horse, and inside is the skeleton of a giant that is only clothed in one thing, a ring. And Gyges' ancestor is like, I'm having that, grabs the ring, heads back home. So he's sitting around talking to his friends, and he puts on the ring, and he turns it around, and suddenly he's invisible. He realizes, I am no longer like other men. And he decides he's going to seduce the queen, kill the king, and take over the kingdom. And he does, because he has a ring that allows him to act with impunity. He has superpowers. Now Glaucon says, what if we were to give a ring like Gyges' ancestor found to a just man and an unjust man? Well, in the case of an unjust man, he's just going to keep on doing what he's doing. He's going to lie, he's going to cheat, he's going to steal, he's going to murder his way to the top because he can. He's no longer bound by the fear of bad consequences for his action. But what about a just man? How would a just man behave if he was given superpowers? Would he continue to follow the law? Glaucon says, no, he wouldn't, because he has also transcended those rules that bind people. He would start behaving in a way that benefits him and potentially harms other people. He would do wrong. And Glaucon adds, as a little bit of a cherry on top, if he didn't do this, people would praise him publicly for not tyrannizing them, but in private they'd be like, this guy's a fucking moron. In the words of Plato, the greatest of philosophers, he would be the most pathetic and brainless of creatures. Glaucon's argument is surprisingly modern. it seems to anticipate social contract theory by positing justice as an agreement between mutually vulnerable agents. It's like my man Thomas Hobbes says, even the strongest must sleep. Even the weakest might persuade others to kill another. So we need justice to protect ourselves. But if we were beyond that, what use would we have of justice at all? What does this tell us about the ethics of superheroes? Well, for Glaucon, he would say there is no one stupider in the DC universe than Superman. Superman is the strongest man in the world. He can fly, he can shoot lasers out of his eyes. He is essentially a god. But what does he do with his power? He protects Metropolis and plays at being a reporter. In Glaucon's mind, all of the world would laugh at Superman, because while he's out saving them, he could actually just be King Superman. It is a waste of power. Glaucon thinks it's far more likely that if someone had this power, they would wind up being like Homelander from The Boys, or the Plutonian, or Omni-Man. Yes, I am a comic book nerd. Look, guys, what did you think? You think I'm captain of the high school football team back in the day? Come on. It's even questionable in Glaucon's argument whether the concept of justice even applies to someone like Homelander or Superman, because they have gone beyond it. If justice is an agreement between mutually vulnerable agents, if you become invulnerable, you can't really be judged by the same metrics used to judge mortals like us. You have gone, to borrow a phrase from Nietzsche, beyond good and evil. These concepts simply don't apply to you anymore. Do we have an answer to Glaucon's challenge? Now, you gotta wait quite some time to get the answer in Republic, because Socrates dances around it for a while. But eventually the argument is this: even if you were free of the constraints of society, you would still need to follow the principles of justice. Why? Because otherwise you would be a slave. You wouldn't be a slave to some external authority or a Superman. You would be enslaved to yourself, to your base passions. Justice is part of rationality, and rationality is about self-control. Superman has self-control. This is why he gets to go home to Lois Lane, why he seems generally well-adjusted, whereas Homelander and Omni-Man and the Plutonian are all a little bit crazy and unhappy. Rational control is what real freedom is, not simply following any base desire you have. So where do I stand on this issue? Am I with Socrates and Superman, or Glaucon and Homelander? Well, between you and me, that's not the interesting part of the Ring of Gyges. The interesting part of the Ring of Gyges is the people without the ring. How would you react to a world in which some had superpowers, but you didn't? Speaking for myself, I am firmly on team Lex Luthor or Baron Zemo or Batman in a pinch. The presence of people with superpowers would produce such a threat, even if they use them for good, that it would be intolerable. Superman can save the world as many times as he likes, but he's always going to be one bad day away from losing his little Kansas mind and enslaving us all. And that's intolerable. But hey, this is just a bit of fun, right? We don't live in a world where superpowers exist. We don't live in a world where a single person could say, shape government policy, or the characteristics of international organizations, or the way in which we communicate with each other, or the fundamental interactions of the capitalist economy. Concentrating that much power in the hands of a single person, why, that's like having Superman flying over our heads, isn't it? Makes my skin crawl. But what about you? Are you on Socrates and Superman's team? Are you on Homelander and Glaucon's? Or are you with me, Lex Luthor and Batman, down in the bunker, making kryptonite bullets? Let me know. Ooh, I'll do it one more time. Bye, everyone.